Hello everyone, and thank you for clicking on the play button here and watching this tutorial. What you see here is just a render of the final product, and it's basically an exploded view of this quote-unquote machine. It's not rigged for any purpose, but what it is an identity piece for an indie film that is in production. I did this in Cinema 4D to make it super dynamic and include a lot of detail so I could fly around and do whatever I wanted with it. So let's jump in. Putting some words in there. Write our machine, and I'm going to grab this Falta and liking it's a Futura. And I'm going to adjust the kerning a little bit. And once you got that, you're going to want to extrude NURBS. Hold down Option. I'm going to grab a little more distance on this and move over the caps. And what I'm going to do is remove the start cap and the end cap, so we kind of have a metal casing looking thing. Already looks pretty cool. Anyways, I'm going to duplicate this guy here and change the text. Just art. And this one's going to be machine. Now they're kind of on top of each other, which is... Now, let's duplicate art. Move it forward in time. Just making sure we got proper distance there. I'm going to go back to the extrude NURBS here and put the caps right back on so we have a solid art. And bring the movement in the Z axis down quite a bit. Almost flat. I'm going to actually put a tiny bit of a fillet on there, just so that it will catch some light. I'm going to do the same thing for machine. And I'm trying to think whether it would be faster to duplicate it or go through that process again. I'm going to duplicate it. I went with the duplication. So I'm going to use my hotkeys here, F4 to line this up a little better. Okay, now everything's lined up. We can go back to our perspective view with F1. And I'm going to go ahead and put a texture on there because I want to make it look good. Make it look good for everybody. Not a red. This is a cooler way to do it. Grab your red. Just double click on the color you see. Specular's fine. I'm going to actually turn a little bit of reflection on. Put a Fresnel on there. Seems to be the popular choice for a realistic looking reflection. Bring down the mixed strength and brightness. I'm going to go through this fairly fast because this is pretty basic stuff. Okay, coolio. Now, should we do a model a little screw? Start with a cylinder object here. And I'm going to grab these little handles to give it the right proportions. So in the attributes editor, crank up those height segments a little bit because we're going to use them to make the point. Let's make this editable. Hit C on your keyboard or that button, and you can see the icon changes. Alright, moving around this thing, and obviously one of these points is going to want to be pointy. So I'm going to grab the point selector, grab that point, and just bring it up. There we go. That looks like a fine screw. Okay. I'm going to put a little top on that. Let's see what would be the best way to put a top on that. An oil tank? That looks good. Bring it over. I'm going to grab this tool here, put it back in object mode so I can quickly size it. I'm going to grab this view so that I can easily line these up, and these are super important. You'd spend many extra minutes if you don't use this tool. Looks pretty good. I'm going to make it a little, nope. probably the radius is here. That looks a little bit better. Okay, so you can do a lot of different things to connect these. First, I'm going to make this editable. And select them both. Go to Objects, Connect and Delete. So I got a single piece there that I can move around. And I'm going to make the twirlies on there, which is, every little detail counts here because you can zoom in an infinite amount. Bring your camera, zoom right there. So the more detail you add, higher quality product you're going to get. Go ahead and grab a helix. Again, bring this perspective view up. Top view. First I'm going to change it to be, I'm just going to use the rotation tool with shift to get perfect coordinates. Grab this thing. And what I'm going to try and do is make this the exact size, and this is where this view is going to help. Put this right in the middle. Grab this guy, the helix. Sorry if I personify my splines too much for you. The start radius and the end radius, you want that to be the same. So I don't know, 10. Let's try 10. I think we'd be better off just doing this. And you kind of see the problem. We have some bits hanging out, and some that are in the model, and some that are outside the model. And so I'm gonna do my best to get that in the center. That looks pretty good. I think that's close. Next thing we're going to want to do is make it a little longer. So we took the height up to where we want it, and now end angle. You want it to be a really twirly one? Yeah, me too. Okay, so now that we got our spline, grab a sweep and a little, probably what we want is a little triangle or rectangle. Grab the sizing tool. There we go. So you click in the middle. That will size everything proportionately, which is very, very helpful. I'm going to make this real small. Real small. Just got a little guy there. And you can put it anywhere, but what you want to do next is grab the rectangle and the helix, put them both in the sweep NURBS with the rectangle on top, and you got a crude screw here. And we're going to bring this down to 10. Looking a little bit better. And I'm actually going to put a quick little divot in here to make it look a little better. For that, I'm going to grab a cube, size her down. You can do a flathead or a Phillips. I prefer the Phillips myself, but for the sake of time, I can go with the flathead. And what I'm doing here is putting the divot. I'm going to put it in a bool, which will carve out geometry from anything you want. Put a bool, put both inside, and beautiful. We have a beautiful screw here. If that happens, you switch it around, and look at that. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And obviously it's dynamic, so you can adjust the depth. And this is our screw. And I hope that yours looks better than mine. You spend a little more time on it. Please. Oh, look at our problem here is that our axis is really far off. You want to take this structure and then axis center tool. That was beautiful. Okay. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And I think it's a little big at this point. So bring it down, really far down, smaller yet. Let's reveal a lovely pet. A little Shel Silverstein for you there. Okay. Probably wants to be a little smaller still. Looks good to me. Now, bring it to the bottom, duplicate it. Got 2. Got 3. I'm going to probably pause this. You get the idea. Cool. Alright, I'm going to group all these and put them into a little null object so I can control them all. Probably did that in an extremely roundabout way, but I'm just going to drag them in and name it front screws. Front screw. I'm going to pause here real quick while I get this finished.
Alright, I'm back, and I have all the screws in the correct places here. I switched view to the back view so that I could really get a good look and make sure everything was lined up. Just so you know, I had some audio problems recording this, so I'm doing a re-record right now. If you can't tell, apologize, but I promise we'll be back to normal soon. Anyways, so here I'm selecting all of the screws, hitting 0 to get my box dragging so I can select everything in there. Just getting them in a little bit closer and grouped up. Now all we have left is everything on the inside. So let's get started. So I'm bringing up this tutorial because I used it as a little guide here, so if you want to check out what that is, that's on DeviantArt by R. Nader. And I didn't use the whole thing at all. I didn't use any ball bearings. I just kind of used it to get a basic form. And now I'll just walk you through it too. But you can reference his original tutorial if you want. I'm going to hit the little red stop light button here on the front and back screws. Just reduce processor power and make everything move a little smoother. And so now to bring the gear into the real world of fake 3D world, I'm going to grab a box and bring the size up a little bit, make it a little flatter. I'm using little handles there. They're pretty fun to size with. I don't like numerical values. Never did. I also hit the fillet ticker box there and just changed the radius, lowered it a bit, adding some segments to the X and the Y so that we can have a nice smooth box. And now I'm going to grab a deformer, and the one we're going to use is taper, and I'm going to have to center that right over our box. The cube is apparent to the taper to get this to actually work, and making sure to turn on the strength. We'll get that to go as well. I'm just kind of working with these values here to get the shape that I want. And I'm actually going to turn this 90 degrees and resize the box a bit to get basically one notch of a gear that we're going to be building. And I'm bringing the curvature all the way down just because I want to have it more mechanical, not a curvy, voluptuous look. I kind of want this to be industrial and a little fierce. Maybe not too fierce. And I'm going to bring down the radius just to take the soft edges off, take them down a bit. I'm going to select both and hit current state to object and to get my own geometry. And I can delete the original bit, and then I just have one piece. It's just easier to work with that way. From there, I put it in an array and make it a child of that array. Select it and go down to your array properties, your object properties. Bring the radius up a bit so that we can kind of see where these gears would go. I have 540 is working for me now. Okay, now to create the middle piece of the gear, I'm going to grab a tube from the primitives drop down, put it in the center the best I can, go over to the attributes on the object, crank up the outer radius so that crank it up a bit more. I'm at about 465. That looks good. And then I'm going to take the inner radius, crank that up as well. I'm at about 370 there. And I'm going to put a bit more segments in there just in case. And as I rotate around this, I realize that it's a little flat. We got to pump up the height a little bit. So, I guess it's up to you how high you really want it. I'm just having it just barely bigger than my gears. Putting a little bit of fillet on there to keep the continuation, keep the look of it the same, like maybe it came out of the same cast. Who knows? Maybe we can fool some people. What do you think? Good? It's looking pretty good for me. Okay, so I'm going to try and get rid of these objects. Make it one object, so I'm going to group them. I'm just going to make it easy. I'm going to group them up. I'm going to name that gear. Gear 1. That makes sense. I'm going to move that 90 degrees. Let's see, holding shift, get it perfect. I think it's a little bit big at this point. We have to take that array and current state to object. And we basically get a bunch of geometry, and we could delete out our array. So now, shrink it down. Size it down a little bit more. Hit the E key and bring it back into our existing design. And it's going to have to be a little smaller, so we'll shrink it down some more. Oh, you can see how we have to grab this from the middle box to do an equal sizing, otherwise the other handles will non-proportionally size it, which is what we do not want. Okay, so after all that, we got one gear ready to go. This machine is looking pretty good. So I've taken the front view so I can move this guy around, duplicate it. I'm selecting just a bit of it, so I want to grab the gear, the null object rather, so I'm not just pulling little bits of this around. I'm going to take the side view here to make sure this thing is in between our kind of metal casing thing. So it's an all contained machine. And again, I'm overdubbing here because of the audio problems, so you may be able to tell I don't even know what's going on. But maybe you can't tell, which would be great. Anyways, the audio problems are just about over. It gets a lot better in a minute. Okay, so we're going to take this gear and we're going to duplicate it. Holding down Control and dragging will give us an easy little duplication. Then we can scoot another one over. Let's duplicate both of the... Maybe duplicate both of those at once so we have a bunch of gears. Bring them down into our other word. Do another duplication. Move them. And it definitely looks like it's going to take some time. I'm going to go to the back view here to just size these up a little better. Maybe make a couple of these smaller. Maybe a couple of them bigger to get some variation. This one I'm going to go a little smaller, move it out. This one will move up into the middle there. It's looking pretty good. Oops, I didn't grab the whole thing there. I'll have to grab the whole null object. Looks like that one's going to have to possibly be sized down a bit, but I'll move on for now. Okay, doing some more duplication. Bringing down the size on this one just a little bit so it fits better. I'll duplicate that object. Oop. Actually, let's go back, duplicate it, scoot it over, and bring it down, just create some variation. Okay. This one's going to have to maybe be sized down a bit. Pulled down. Yeah, that's where our part would be, for sure. Looks like all these needed to come down a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at it in the perspective view and see what it looks like. Turn everything on, scoot back. So, obviously we want a lot more stuff in there. So, and let me introduce you to a little thing called 3D Warehouse. I mean, we could spend a lot of time building unique gears and filling this up. Going over to 3D Warehouse, is going to save you a lot of time if you can do it, you know? sketchup.google.com/3D warehouse and search for what you need here. And for us, let's try gears. And we're getting some interesting results, some pieces that are nice. You know, where I couldn't suggest this for every project, this particular one, this could be extremely helpful. So just click on the download model and go ahead and download the collada.zip file, because that will go into Cinema 4D. When you open it up, I may as well just drag this into Cinema. You can't see down below here, but this is what I'm doing. I'm dragging it into Cinema 4D. And it asks if you want to open it. And that's again, it's your choice, but I'm going to say yes. For the scale, sometimes these can be quite off, so I tend to make it a little bigger so we know where it is. You can always scale it, make it smaller, but for now, make it a little bigger. It opens up a new project file with some interesting texture materials. You can go ahead and delete those, copy the gear model, and paste it into your existing project. And so we found it here, and I'm going to try and center the axis here with the Axis Center tool. And there we go. Let's create a material for it. Okay, so I'm going down below here to load material, and I'm going to select a standard metal 3. That sounds awesome. Apply that texture there. And finally, let's rotate it 90 degrees. And push it back, just like we did with the other one. And it looks like we're getting kind of a weird ghosting leftover piece, which I'm not exactly certain what it is. But I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I don't think I need it. So I do a box select by holding 0 and delete those pieces, and lo and behold, we are still fine. We're still have a project here, still have a gear. Great. Scale it up a little bit here and move it on back and back. I'm going to go ahead and hide this art here just so I can get this thing into position. It'll be a little easier. And you can see I'm kind of doing the same thing I did with the model I made, just putting it in a position to taste. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of spread this out and go grab some other cool parts, maybe that gear, maybe I'll put a car in there, but I'm going to populate that up and I'll be right back. Ooh, Metal Gear. Okay, so I filled this thing up so full of gears that it has to work by now. You know what I mean? Actually, that's not true, but it's pretty filled up, as you can see. And this view actually looks pretty cool. This is the back view. And you can see I've filled this up with all sorts of things, from Google warehouse items and some homemade pieces. A few of the washers, the really, really bad looking ones, I made those. And cool. So back to perspective view. There's one final piece before we can start animating, and there's these steel plate looking things that go in that basically, theoretically would screw all the electronics onto there, or whatnot. So let's get started on those. And I'm basically going to use the splines from ART, spells art, and I still have a spline here, so I'm going to duplicate it, and it's on its own. I'm going to pull it out and make sure to keep it in the same place just so you don't have to line it up down the line in the future. I'm actually going to go into the editor and bring it back down to just A, and that definitely messed us up over here, but we'll fix that. Before we do anything, before we extrude NURBS, anything like that, we're going to edit this spline. Please work with me here. I'm going to bring this over here. We're going to edit this spline to give it just like a half look. We're only going to fill about half of this A, just to give it an interesting look and not be so thick with parts through it. You'll see. You'll see. I'm going to make it editable, so you can change the splines. You can change the splines. And basically you could delete a few of these dots out. And yeah, you're going to have to click away and click back to get some of these pieces. And another thing you're going to want to do is chamfer these things, which you can access from your left click, your right click. Oh, look, I chamfered every single one, which is great. I actually wanted to do that. Right. So this is kind of a finicky tool, and you'll have to learn by trial and error. But I'm going to go back, hit Control Z here, so I can show you what I did. You can get there a number of ways, but I'm going to right click, go down to chamfer, and basically you click and drag to the right. This is if you want to do one at a time. You can go backwards to your selection tool, select all the points, right click, chamfer, click and drag, voila. Don't click again, you gotta click out and click back in to get it, otherwise you're gonna do a double chamfer. But right there, that looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna go with that. Actually, let's go take a look at our A and see if that's even gonna work. We might have to increase the size of this inside one so we're not overlapping. So I'm going to select those, bring it up a bit, bring it up proportionally, and I'm going to size it up a bit. And you can make these changes too, because it's still going to be editable. We're going to go and grab a extrude NURBS. So let's select our spline here, and while holding Option, release. That's extruded, we just can't see it. But yeah, went back to perspective view to see that. But I'm gonna hone in on this guy here. Check it out from the side. That's a thick piece there. Let's edit this a bit. I want it to be very thin. I'm gonna put a cap on the start. Let's check out these stats. Make it 4 steps, just one. Let's check it out. That's exactly what I want. I might make it a tiny bit thinner. Okay. And to create the little rivets in this plate, I'm going to create a new cylinder. Move it over here so we can work on it. And the cylinders can create some problems, to say the least. So let me bring those up as we get to it. But first, I'm going to size it down a bit and create 15 height segments, just so we have enough to choose from. Okay. And we want to make this editable. Hit the C key. And let me do it the wrong way here, just so you can see what the problem is. On these objects, it's basically two different sets of polygon, this wraparound and then the lids, and they're not actually connected. So I'm going to hit U and L to loop select. I'm going to select all the top bits, hit T for the size, and ooh, that's not right. See, have a problem there, and we're going to be using the Boolean tool in just a moment, and that's not going to fly. So I'm going to hit Command Z, or Apple Z to undo, and I'm going to select all, go to functions, and optimize. Basically that takes out the double pointage in here and it connects it. So I'm still on loop select. No, I'm not. U, L for loop select. Grab those, hit T, and as we expand out, we're very happy. We're so very happy because they've moved together. And this is the exact object I want. This is perfect. Okay, so let's move along. Rotate this 90 degrees. Again, rotate this 90 degrees. And need to be in the modeling tool, obviously, to actually move something. Little caveat there. Okay. Now, line this up with where we want it. We're going to have to bring this size down quite a bit. Still want to go down. And that looks pretty good for now. Line it up there, so we're going to get a tiny bit of a bevel on there. How's that look for size? Pretty good, I'd say. Okay, now go up and grab a bool and bring in, let's just flip-flop those. Bring your spline object that's extruded and the cylinder, select them both, bring them into the bool. And we got ourselves a little rivet type of deal there. That's pretty cool. But for the cylinder, we're going to have to use a cloning object to create a bunch of them. So, I mean, you could duplicate them a million times, but I wouldn't suggest it. Grid clone tool could do that, but I'm going to go ahead and use a cloner object. And right off the bat, obviously we need to pull it into the bool. Okay, finally got the right order there. And we're gonna have to pull this back into the bool. Bring this on top. Okay, so that really kind of brought everything over there, which isn't that awesome, but we can fix that. We can fix it. Okay. Grid array. Let's rotate these bad boys 90 degrees again. Let's make sure they're functioning in the bool correctly before we get too far into this. Well, I'm gonna grab this cloner object and hit. In the Z, we only need one there. This, we need a couple more. That density looks pretty good to me. Bring it forward. Zoom in a bit to make sure they're still functioning, and they are. And that looks pretty good. You know, you can futz with the density here and even the angle if you wanted to rotate it a little bit to match up with the A, but it doesn't quite make sense to me that it would do that. You know, some of them are off, which I definitely would try and make sure that that's not happening. You know, don't want too much of that, but it's kind of unavoidable unless you want to keep futzing with it. And I'm gonna go with keeping that, and you're gonna have to do this for every letter. I'm just moving the axis center to back up to our A so we can move it around pretty easy. Cool. Let's move it into place, see what it looks like. I want to have it behind this object. Checking it out front view so we can get a perfect lineup. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, it's getting a little sluggish here, so I'm gonna go into the viewport level of detail and hit medium. See if that speeds us up. That's nice. That's very nice. Okay, I'm gonna duplicate this whole bit here. I did that by holding Option and Control and dragging. I'm going to drag it over here and try and edit this spline to fit the R. Okay, this is thoroughly not working very well for me. What's my other solution? My other solution is to bring an actual letter into this in the same position and use that as a spline. So let's give it a shot.